We are so delighted to have the two of you sit down with MB Magazine and just talk about this next chapter of what God is doing in your lives for the both of you. I just want us to have a fluid conversation, very organic. The two of you have just gotten engaged. Mm-hmm. How does that feel?
It feels good.
Yeah,
I mean, it's exciting.
Yeah.
I love the fact that, after a couple of years, it's still as exciting as the beginning. That's kind of one of the ways you know.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, we still just we have as much fun dating each other now that we did, in the beginning. So it's like, it's exciting to go to the next level, but we just still enjoy each other, which is amazing.
And she's gonna make sure we enjoy ourselves. She's the jokester, the planner, and all of that.
Yeah.
As she should. In all relationships, it's really about balancing one another. Mm-hmm. And that's why God puts us together.
Right.
Okay? As husband and wife. You have a role, you'll have a role. Mm-hmm. Husband, wife, the two roles will converge and it will be something absolutely amazing. When we think about marriage and the context of what little boys always think about or what little girls always think about, society tells us that little girls are always dreaming of their wedding day. They're always dreaming and thinking of getting married. Mm-hmm. Pastor Keion, I just want to ask you, from the male perspective, what is it that young boys think of in terms of marriage?
That's young boys don't. I mean,
that's good.
That's not something we're thinking about. When you're younger, you're thinking about sports. You're thinking about what kind of entrepreneur you want to be. So it's not so much embedded in our DNA. And if you add that to the fact that a lot of our fathers, especially African American men, are missing from the home, then there's not much talk of marriage. And I can speak for my home. My mother was single, so there wasn't much talk about it. But when I was a child, I thought as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. So now as a man, I can speak to that. And what happens is this is the best example I've heard. When a woman thinks about marriage, she's thinking about beginnings. Where are we going to get the house and what city are we going to live in and the dress and my friends and my circle. It's the beginning. For men, marriage actually represents the end. No more searching. I don't have to look. I found exactly what I'm looking for. So here it is with her sitting next to me. She's thinking about the beginning of a thing, and I'm sitting here in the same space thinking about the end of a thing.
Would you agree with that, Shaunie?
I think that's really a good perspective. I never thought about it like that, but not knowing how a man thinks, of course, but I could see how men think, okay, this is it. I'm settled. I don't have to be out here. I mean, and in a way, women are, I think at this age especially, you are thinking that, right? Because the dating pool is not the best place to be right about now. So I think like that in a way. In a way I'm like, okay, finally, it feels so good to have the partner that we all dreamed of, right? As the little girl, you want your hero, your knight in shining armor guy to come along and sweep you off your feet. And it took a while to get there, but the fact that I'm here now, I think it is a beginning for me, as opposed to a settling end for him, which is actually kind of cool because I think it just meets each other and makes that perfect match of like I'm thinking beginning, he's thinking end, and we'll fill in the middle.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking in terms of an end for you and a beginning for you, let's think in terms of purpose. What would you say is the purpose of your marriage to one another?
Yeah, I think it's important. The first purpose of this marriage is for me to realize that she was who she was before I met her. I've seen so many people, and I get a chance to counsel people, we will marry a person because of who they are and then spend the rest of our lives trying to change them. I'm determined to allow her to be herself. It's what I fell in love with, and it's what complements the destiny that I have, the gregariousness, the entrepreneurial mindset, the philanthropic mindset. And for us, I think it's important for people to realize that neither of our lives have changed. We're not, destiny didn't tap us on the shoulder and our directions changed. We collided. She was always heading this way, and I was always headed towards her. And the Christ in her that her mother instilled from a little baby. I didn't meet her as a non-church goer. I met her, and one of our conversations was about the relationship she had with her pastor. So this is a continuum for us, which makes it so enjoyable for us. And we look out on the outside and we see people trying to figure out, how does this girl from Hollywood meet this guy in the church? And at dinner when we're talking, I'm talking about all of the counseling sessions she had with her pastor. And her pastor did call and tell her, don't forget who your pastor is. I told him you need to call him back and tell him you got a new pastor. But it's an amazing journey. I'm having the best time of my life.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
I think people think that it's this change, or like this is new, especially for me. Like when culture meets faith, it's like, oh my God, these are so different. And yes, but no. This is not brand new to me. I grew up in church. I sang in the choir. My mother was the pianist at our church growing up. I was a church secretary when I was 18, 19 years old. So church is not new, even though most people assume it is. And so I do want people to understand that this is not like a culture shock for me. This is not anything that I am uncomfortable being in at all.
We're sitting here doing an interview with you today. We're blessed by it, but we spent 4 hours yesterday in choir rehearsal.
Right. That's amazing.
Just looking at the choir, and
I directed.
From the audience, she's directing, and
from my seat.
Yeah.
Because I'm Ricky Dillard on the inside.
Doing too much, but it's an amazing journey. I look forward to the unfolding of it. Bible says, and the two shall become one flesh.
That's right.
And that word in the Hebrew, become, is actually becoming. So what every person who desires to get married to anybody should know, that you don't become one the day you meet. You're becoming one through the entire process. There are people who have been married right now who are 30 years into it and have yet to become one. Mark Twain says that every human being is like the moon, that we only really know 59% of each other. When you see a moon and you say it's a full moon, 41% of the moon has never been seen from Earth. And he says that the man is like the moon, that 41% of him is unknown. And so I intend to spend the rest of my life figuring out that other 41%.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Good,
it really is.
I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, pretty good.
So I'm thinking about that, and something that you said earlier is that she's who she's always been. She's who she was birthed to be. You're who you were birthed to be. And you were always traveling in the direction toward each other. It took some life experiences to occur. It took some relationships to occur to get you to where you are now. And the reality is, God has a purpose yet for you both. Just like he says for us in the book of Jeremiah, for I know the plans that I have for you. You have a plan for your life. In order for you to achieve that purpose, that goal, that plan, it requires Shaunie in your life.
Absolutely.
That's why now. So, Shaunie, let's talk about that.
Okay.
That's a huge mantle to carry.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that we work at this. It's not, I think that's another thing that people should know, is that we work at making this work. It is, had somebody said that to us, when we were all younger, I think life would have been just a little easier. It's a process, and it's a work in process. So we do our counseling. We put the work in, and you're right. It's a job, but it's a job that we have both committed to, that we're both determined for each other to reach our goals, and we are going to push each other to make them, and we're going to step in and be the piece that helps take each other where we're trying to go. So whatever that requires of me in his life is what I plan on being and doing. You know, first and foremost, I am going to be his wife, and what he needs of me in that role, period. And then when it comes to the church and being the first lady, wherever that is for me, you know, I'm going to figure out where my space is there and not conform to what people expect or want me to be. Because at the end of the day, you can't please everybody, right?
That's right.
So I am going to, and he's so patient in that space. He's like, you know what? Figure out where you want to be, what role you want to play, how you want to do this, and don't let anybody rush you. Don't let anybody tell you what that has to be, or it's not on a piece of paper or any book. And I appreciate that. But I think he knows that I'm here to support him as he is me. We discuss everything, all, you know, pretty much most decisions we sit down and talk about. We have a great communication process going that we worked at. And I think it's just helpful in that space.
Yeah, I would say the closer she gets to what our members would want her to be, the further she's going to get away from what I'm looking for.
Amen.
I'm not looking for her to go satisfy a group of people who could hear a better sermon next Sunday and decide to go to another church. We have a partnership, and that partnership is, number one, to bring God glory through our union.
Yes.
Number two, to ensure that our children get an opportunity to see love so that they'll know what real love feels like, and not the pseudo love that a lot of us have settled for. So we've got an example to lead. We have a church to lead, and in that church are people who are entrepreneurs. In that church are people who seek to go into industry. You know, when the Bible says that Jesus said, go into all the world and teach them, what he really meant is go into all the world systems. And how can the church be effective if the only place it stays is in the church? The church needs to have an expression in business. The church needs to have an expression in philanthropy, in magazines. There need to be Christian people who interview people. There needs to be a Christian at the top of this building as the CEO. We need to be represented everywhere, because the world has to be one for Jesus, not just the church.
That's really good. And you said something very key earlier, when she's trying to, or should she try to fulfill those desires of what a congregation wants of a pastor's wife, a preacher's wife. Hey, it's a catchy title that we've heard from way back in the day. You know, the Preacher's Wife movie, it was so popular, right?
Yeah.
And trying to live up to someone else's standards is just not going to cut it.
Yeah.
It's just not. When we look at, like you said, who we have in the church now, they can hear a sermon from someone next week and it ends them in a different place. But meanwhile, they've been in the ear of the pastor's wife, trying to change you, trying to denature your relationship.
Yeah.
And those are the types of challenges that the two of you are up against as you become husband and wife. As any husband or wife is going to be up against challenges. But unfortunately, because of the way not just society is, but the spiritual realm is, you're going to come against demons that are going to be after your marriage in such a way. And what better people to work through than the people of the church? So my prayer for you, MB Magazine's prayer for you in your marriage, is that you strike that balance and that you not be deceived by some of the vices that will come towards you in the name of the church, but realize that you are his wife. You are her husband. And in that is your first ministry, one into another.
Absolutely.
And so how will you set an example of keeping the appropriate boundaries in your marriage between your role in one another's life and your role with the church?
Well, I know one thing for sure. If she don't like me, they won't. If she decided that she wanted to leave, they would be looking at me wondering, what's wrong with them? So as opposed to meeting those standards, the way I set the boundary is I do my best to satisfy what God gave me. See, the only covenant relationship that I will have will be her.
Yes.
She has to come before the child that I have. The little 9-year-old that I helped to birth into the earth, I have to choose this relationship above that. One of the things my mentor always taught me, he says, you'll never be disappointed when you recognize what's normal. When you figure out what's normal, you won't be thrown off. So I understand that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but of
Yes.
spirits and wickedness in high places. I know that's built in. I understand that. And so we have great support systems. We both have great mentors. Our mentors cross-pollinate. We talk to each other. We've got great counselors. And you can't over-spiritualize everything. Some of the stuff is natural. You know, you can't just fall down on your knees and pray about everything. Sometimes you got to go and get on somebody's couch and lay down and deal with trauma, right? You know, this ain't all, it's not, the church is not our biggest weapon. There is an evil force in the world that comes up against marriage, and it doesn't matter if you're in church or it doesn't matter if you work at Taco Bell, it's coming after you.
So let me ask you this. Why do you think that there's such a great force against the union of marriage?
Well, I think number one, it's a spiritual thing, right? Look at all of the great things that happen through the union of two people, right? It takes two people to birth a person. And there's always discerning and disconcerting forces in the world that's against anything that's unified, right?
Yes.
It's not just marriage. It's the power of anything that unifies, and there will always be an opposing force that looks to diversify. And so again, that's normal. The reason why I think it comes up against marriage, speaking from a spiritual standpoint, we know that God instituted marriage. So the enemy is against everything that God created. It's the first thing he did in the garden. Before we see men produce children, we saw them become one flesh. So it's really the enemy's attack against God's original invention and creation in man. He hates it. And we both have been victims of failed marriages, which is something that we've talked about, that I would love to put in the mainstream. We are up in our age, and we didn't just meet each other in high school. We went through some stuff to get here.
Yes.
And so,
Right.
you know, I'll leave the rest to her, but I think that's why. I think the enemy is after what God created. I don't think it's any more complex than that.
Yeah, agreed. I totally agree.
So when you think in terms of the assignment of the enemy is coming against unity, coming against oneness, and when you think about remarriage, which is where we are at now, do you think the world is in need of examples that draw us back to the essential foundation of what God's design was for marriage, to as a reminder? And if we need those examples, what do you see your role being in that through what God is joining with you now?
I don't know. I don't look at it as if the world needs this, I don't know, this picture of remarriage, so to speak, because I don't think we even address it like that. We don't really look at our relationship as like, oh, we're the, poster children for
Right.
remarriage. It's not, I don't think we ever think of it that way. But what I do think is that we give hope to people who have been divorced or just had failed relationships. And of course, both of us being 40 plus, it gives hope to those that have just kind of given. Because I will be honest, like I was single for 10 years and dated, but nothing ever serious. I mean, I knew I wasn't ever going to be with anybody that I dated. It was just like fun, you know, or you just go on dates. And it was lonely, and at a certain point I got to where I was like, I really want to be with somebody like for the rest of my life. Like because I thought I would never get married again. That was just out of the question, not doing it. And then as I got older, it was like, no, you know, my kids are getting older, everybody's leaving, and I want that person, and it was not happening. It wasn't happening, and I just stopped thinking about it. I guess I gave up, you know. And I have so many, we talk about it all the time, I have so many single girlfriends, and they're just always like, you give us hope that there's still a chance, because the dating pool sucks, and, you know, and it does. But I think Keion is right. Like, we were just destined to meet, and we were always in each other's path, not knowing it. And even though it was so many things I said I wouldn't do again, and I didn't want, and it's just like, you have to let those things go. You know, you have to, this was clearly in God's plan. And even though I'm stepping into a space that people I would seem as unexpected, it feels so right, and so
Yes.
it's our normal, right? It's so normal, even though other people are looking at it like, how does that work? It's our normal. And again, I think it just kind of gives hope to people that have been in our shoes or similar shoes, and that there's the light at the end of the tunnel.
I think there's another barrier too that's also being shattered, because it's always positioned as if, you know, she's coming into my world. But I think there's another narrative that's unfolding, because I grew up in a Baptist church, and this is the scripture all the preachers use: be thou faithful unto death. So, and you just had to preach and preach, and if you did anything else other than preach. But I'm an entrepreneur. I own my own businesses. I've got my own nonprofits. I've got some other things that are going on. So what I hope our example would be is the intersectionality of what we're both doing, right? That she took faith to the marketplace, and I'm bringing the marketplace to faith, and that there's this intersectionality. When Jesus found Peter, he was a fisherman, right? Yes. So we're all disciples in some kind of way, and we have to be comfortable with the fact that all preachers don't preach in churches, and all evangelists don't have a pulpit. That we've got to be sharing the gospel through our own ways, in our own spaces, and it always isn't through a sermon. Sometimes it's through a lifestyle. God needs wealthy people. He's got to have smart people. We need saved engineers.
Yes.
We need saved people who own production companies. We cannot shrink wrap ourselves into a 4x4 building or a wall with a steeple and think that that's a representation of the church. My God is so big that when I hear people talk about the church, it almost seems like this microcosm of a bigger expression, and he's much bigger than that. Right. So if anything I want people to get out of our union is to see how big our God is, how vast he is, and how he can use anybody to do anything at any time.
That's incredible. I mean, the way you take and you merge these two thought processes together. And I hear you saying that it's not just you bringing her into your world, she's bringing you into her world.
Absolutely.
And we have these two wonderful burning worlds that God is fusing together as one world together, now for a reason.
If I were to give you the definition of marriage,
Yes.
the collision of two histories.
That's true.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
The
This is
collision
good.
of two histories.
Let's
and the
unpack
magic
that.
and the magic that happens when two worlds collide. Could you
That's
imagine
good
what's
stuff.
in her planet that my planet doesn't have? And what's in my planet that her planet doesn't have?
Yeah.
And that the fertile soil is ready to reproduce in the intersectionality of those worlds to create a super planet,
Wow.
right? That more people can survive in. Our union, I hope, actually expands the church and let other people
Right.
know you're safe in here,
Right.
That's
that
good.
there is room for you at the cross, and Jesus loves you too, no
That's
matter
good.
what you did yesterday, no matter where you were yesterday, no matter how you talk. I want people to understand our God is not this depiction of the dictatorial mindset that some people have painted God into being this evil, callous guy. He's so loving.
That's
And
good.
so open and so free and so kind. And you go and find God in the Bible, you don't find him with Pharisees and Sadducees who are modern day religious people. I preached a sermon the other day about a woman caught in the act of adultery, and Jesus says, okay, she did what she did, but let me ask you a question. He who was without sin cast the first stone. And the Bible says after he asked that question, everybody dropped their rock and walked away, and he looked at the woman and said, where are your accusers? And she said, I don't have any, because the only people that could keep the rock were the perfect people, and there were none.
And there are none.
There are none.
Right? It's something to strive for.
Yeah.
Right.
But the reality is we are who we are, and God needs us imperfect.
Absolutely.
He brings us two imperfect people. We're whole, and you bring your whole, and I bring my whole, and then
good.
together we merge together to become what it is that God desires us to be. But also understanding that there's a groundedness, there's a yieldedness to bringing forth His purposes in the earth. And it's an amazing thing. That's what excites MB Magazine about what we're seeing occurring in your lives right now, is that the hope that you talked about.
Yeah.
It's a hope that it's not something that you're coveting over here and nobody's able to see it, but you're inviting people in to get a glimpse of how big our God is.
Right.
What His promises are fulfilled in your life. It may not have occurred when you wanted it to, or even with who you wanted it to occur with.
Right.
I mean, the two of you have budded families, and you're growing an even bigger family now, also in the household of faith. And God still has His hand on it, knowing that when you were 3 years old, you'd be sitting here with this man right now, fulfilling your life's purpose.
Right.
Being an extension of God's hand in his life as he fulfills his purpose. That's the fullness of it. That's the beauty of how amazing our God is. And we're just fortunate that you've allowed MB Magazine to be able to share this moment with you and to share with our readers just how truly amazing and fulfilling God is.
Yeah.
And when you stay the course and walk in your purpose and be who you are. When you met her, she wasn't being someone else. She was being exactly who she is. The same with Pastor Keion.
Absolutely.
He was being exactly who God has called him to be. And now with these worlds coming together, I can only imagine how many chains are going to be broken.
Wow.
I received that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think she's the best decision I ever made. One of my favorite quotes is, "You were born looking like your parents, but you die looking like your decisions." And
Yes.
I think that how we will progress having chosen each other, because we picked each other. I didn't just pick her. She had options. She picked me too. And I had to get rid of some of them options
Wow.
by sticking my head up and letting them know she was off the market. But yeah, I love her and I appreciate it. No, it wasn't no options. I like to tell myself that. But
No, I'm excited about what God is doing in this space, in this. I mean, like, it's, sometimes I sit back and just look at God move in our lives collectively, because it's like, my daughter, my 15-year-old went to church with us last Sunday, and we got back to the house and she calls him Kern. She
Who
makes
knows
up
why?
nicknames for everybody, right? So she was like, Kern, that was really good. And so he was like, well, thank you. And so she was like, I didn't understand everything, but what I did understand, it was so good. Like, she was trying to tell her sister about the sermon. And that, to me, was like, this is, it's continuous confirmation that this is right. And this is in God's plan, because like to hear her trying to explain to her sister what the sermon was, and she did a great job, but just that it meant something to her. She's 15, their attention span is this long, and she heard that sermon 2 hours before she was talking about it. And she even asked me, she was like, what is he going to talk about this Sunday? I'm like, I don't know, but she's interested. The way he describes and explains the Bible is so absolutely different than how I grew up. Now, same story, but I'm like, well, I never knew, I never knew that's what that scripture was saying. But, traditionally, I grew up in a Baptist church too, so traditionally, it was just, you knew them in your head, you memorized them, you memorized all the hymns, you memorized all the scriptures, and you might not necessarily know what they meant, or what you just had them memorized. So like now I'm like, wait a minute. So all that time I've been thinking, it's just, like I said, it's just in God's plan, and God's hand is totally on every part of this union, because like from my kids to things that are just happening in our lives professionally, that's just joining it.
Yes.
It's making us work together on things that I never would have thought we would work together on. Like what I do as far as producing television, and him being a pastor and an entrepreneur, us coming with brand new ideas and brand new branches of business to go into, that's just like working. That's just happening without us even trying to, come up with a plan. Like we don't have to sit and be like, what are we going to do? What's our plan for 5? It's just happening.
And she's come, to talk about her being the first lady. That's a new credit on her sheet. But me being a producer,
right,
is a new credit on
right,
my sheet.
that's
So
true.
I mean, it is what it is.
It's that balancing.
It's the balance.
It's that balancing. And I'm sitting here and I'm listening to the two of you speak of, exactly how God has fused you together in your different roles, in your different arenas, and the two of you had 2 complete lives before each other. Right. Two complete lives. But God saw fit to bring you together now at this junction and for this time. I just asked you, with lives so full and so complete, what do you think, or what do you feel was the purpose for God fusing the two of you together now? Like, why now?
I know that she has everything I don't. So in order for me to get to the next reiteration of me, I needed capacity that I didn't possess.
Yes.
I'm literally all work and no play. Like, I am a workaholic. I go to work every day. I don't like to be late. I think that on time is 15 minutes early. Go to work, have a business meeting. And then she comes and says, we need to go throw axes. She took me skiing. I am a black man from Gary, Indiana. Skiing, we were so poor that I thought only rich people could ski. So I never even pursued it. The Bible says that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.
Yes.
And if you're not careful in church, you'll just know way and truth. You'll have no life. And she has helped me to realize that there was more to life than way and truth. And again, that makes me a complete Christian. So I think God is pleased with who we're becoming. That's why now, because there is more required of me, but I could not have done more without that missing part. I can do work now because I enjoy life. I enjoy life so much more. I do so many more things that I never did before. She brought it out of me, and I'm a kid again, and I like that I can have fun again. I smile more than I used to. I can go on and on about her. I really love her, and when you smooth like me, you don't just say that out loud. You know, it's as cool as I am. You know, you kind of hold that back.
Oh,
You don't want them to know
God.
that you love them like that, but I'll go ahead and tell her. I love her. So I appreciate it.
He's so smooth. That's
I
why
am,
he had to tell
I
you.
am that. I am smooth. Tell
He is
him,
pretty-
tell
no,
him
you're
my
pretty
my
smooth. You
tagline:
are.
smooth as ice,
And
twice as nice. Ain't had a bad day in my life. There it is.
How do you top that?
No,
do you top that?
he is pretty smooth. I'll give him that. Y'all have to see his dance moves, but that's a whole nother story.
Turn it out.
But I think, I was just telling someone that was in the dressing room with me that he makes me want to be better every day. Just watching him and how passionate he is and how much he cares and how much he works at his craft. It's one thing to hear from God and speak to the people. Keion studies. He puts in that time, no matter how much I say, let's go throw axes and get some stress out and whatever, he's going to be like, you know what? Okay, we can do that, but I need to put a couple hours in. I mean, he works at it, and I respect that. It's not just something that it's a God-given gift, but he puts the time and the effort and the work into being as excellent at it as he possibly can, which I love. And like I said, it just makes me want to be better. I might, and he knows when it's business time, but I fit in. I do like to enjoy life, and I do want to enjoy, I struggle with not being, I have 5 kids, so I struggle with not being in 5 places, not being able to support each one of them physically all the time. And I think that's where the fun part came in, because I had to realize, I'm going to miss that if I don't reel in this work thing a little bit. And that's what I did. And I just found that, I was able to figure out a balance, and it took some time. And he didn't have that balance. So I was like, you got to listen. There's things out there that you're just missing. You got to enjoy it. And then it makes, when you go back to doing your work, you can enjoy that a little bit, because you release some stuff over here. So we give each other a balance. We definitely do that. But I love that he makes me cognizant about being a better person every day. And I mean, and he's handsome, and he's smooth, and he's sweet.
Yeah.
So he's all those things, but he does, internally make me want to have a better heart and how I approach things and think of things. So I'm a person that came with walls. I came with walls up. I don't let people in very easy at all, because, it's just been an easy way to maneuver through life for me. It's just to keep walls up where we don't get too close. You can't hurt me, so, because I'm not going to let that wall down. He's help me break those walls and figure out a space where I still feel safe, but I don't come as guarded. So, yeah. He just makes
So
me
can we
better.
unpack that just for a moment? Because anytime you've been hurt in relationships, or the relationships didn't go quite the way you wanted them to, you can build those walls, and those walls keep you prisoner just as much as they keep that out that you don't want in.
Right.
Obviously, there was a heart change. There had to also be a heart change for you. What does that look like, and what kind of hope can you give others in what God has done for you to be able to have that heart change and that shift? Because that has to occur for 2 individuals to come to the place of where you are now based on where you've been. Right. Yes, we know that it's all predestined. It had to happen. It had to happen the way it happened. Otherwise, the 2 of you would not be together now. But how do you get to the point of the shift in your heart?
I'm going to go first, because your answer is going to be way better than mine.
No.
So I think first you have to be aware that the walls are there. Because if you're not aware, you function through it. And I don't know that I knew the walls were there until I met him. I kind of was aware that I kept walls as far as like a friendship circle and, social circle. And I was comfortable there. I'm fine with that. But like as far as relationships, I did not realize that I had these walls until it was like a eureka moment, because I remember having a conversation with him, telling him what I would not tolerate in a relationship or what is a deal breaker. And while I'm saying it out loud, I'm thinking, that's a turn off. Like you come with this list of things that you will not tolerate or you will not forgive. And I don't know how he was receiving it, but I was saying it and thinking, yeah, that's going to be kind of miserable. You know what I mean? If you go through life expecting this new relationship to come with these rules that you're setting, and that will be a happy place, but you're giving it all these limitations and all these fears, right? Of like, you do this and it's over, and you do that, so it was that moment for me that I realized that I had these walls, and that just wasn't going to be anything that could possibly be a positive for going into a happy relationship. So awareness is where I think it starts, is being aware of what baggage per se, or walls, or whatever you want to call them, what they are for you personally. And are you willing to recognize that that's a problem that you need to fix, that you need to work on, that's not okay, and then doing something about it. So not only did I break the wall down, I was like, this is just not this. I don't want it. I don't even want to think like this. So it was work that I put in on me. Even though I came into this relationship thinking, 10 years of being single and just dating, I did so much work. I worked on myself. I put in, I recognized what was wrong with me, but you don't recognize really what your challenges are until you're challenged. So I could work on them all day by myself. I could be aware, right? I could say, I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do this. Until that bear is poked, you don't know if the work you've been doing really has worked or not. So I was poked in those spaces that I thought I was working on and that I thought I had fixed. And until he came and challenged me in those spaces, I was like, oh, girl, you okay. So, you got a little more work to do, which that's what we do together. And that's what we have to recognize about each other. It's those things that we might have brought in that we didn't intentionally bring in, but we're aware of. Let's put them on the table. And now I need to know that that's some trauma you had. I need to know that this is a trigger for you. You need to know that about me. And we put that work in every day. In some way. We have a thing on Wednesday talks. We sit down. We have to give each other 10 minutes uninterrupted to say good, bad, or ugly. Sometimes you don't have any. It's like, babe, it's been a great week. I have nothing to say. Or it's been such a great week. I have all these praises to give you of how wonderful the week has been. So it's work. It's work and being aware at all times of you, him, the other, however, whatever it is you're working on, is being aware.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. So beautiful.
When forgive me in talking and preacher talk all the time. It's the only way I know how to think. But when God got ready to choose a new king of Israel, he sends a prophet named Samuel to a man named Jesse's house. And Jesse gets in the house and he sees, Samuel gets to Jesse's house and he sees he has this tall son who the Bible describes as handsome. And Samuel says, this is the next king. And then God says to him, Samuel, you made your last decision based on how the guy looked, because Saul was handsome and head and shoulders above the rest. He says, I judge not the countenance of a man, but the heart. Mm-hmm. The question was about the heart.
That's right.
You must understand that everything you will or will not achieve in life will be a result of the position of your heart at the time of the opportunity.
So good.
When your heart is in the right place, you'd be amazed at what God could do with somebody who feels inadequate. Because I don't always feel like I'm good enough to do what he's calling me to do. I don't always feel like I have the skill set to do what he's asking me to do. But I know what I'm going to bring to the table every time, creating me a clean heart and renewing me a right spirit. If I bring my heart to the table, purified every time, I may not always have the language, may not always have the speech, may not always have the connection, but my heart has gotten me through every door that I've ever been through, and I refuse to allow anything or anyone to short circuit the electricity and power that a pure heart brings. It could help you achieve anything you want it to, if you could just not be bitter and get better.
So good. So good. This has been such an enriching time for MB Magazine, and just being able to share in your lives, creating me a clean heart. Shouldn't that be every last one of our prayers?
Right.
I mean, that is the hope, to be able to achieve in life what the two of you have been able to achieve in finding one another. Not just finding someone to spend time with, not just finding someone that you can say, yeah, I'm marrying this person, this is who I'm going to spend the rest of my life with,
Right.
but someone who I can face life's challenges with,
Absolutely.
someone who I can bond with, merge with, and become one as God intends for us to become one. Someone who makes me want to do better every day. Someone who God can use me as an extension of his hand of grace, mercy, and love in their lives. It's an amazing thing, and a lot of people experience it, yet there are so many more that have these walls that don't know how to release them in order to truly experience that abundant life. My prayer for the two of you is that you walk in the fullness of what God has created in this time, in this space, this opportunity, because your heart is in the right place.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Any other words of wisdom that you'd like to share with MB Magazine before we
It's our
close?
wisdom giver.
No words of wisdom, just appreciation
Yeah.
of providing a platform for us to serve your readers
Yeah.
with our story, and hopefully something that we have done or said will help somebody get over the hump. You always, I think that your life is the sum total of your yeses and nos.
Yes.
And if you would have said yes when you said no and said no when you said yes, we all be somewhere different. I
Right.
hope this helps people to say yes in the right places and no in the wrong.
That's good. Yeah.
So good. we are so just godly happy for the two of you.
Thank
I mean,
you so much.
I am
Thank you.
looking forward to, MB Magazine is looking forward to all that God is going to use you to do in the lives of one another
Yeah.
and your families, and just the example that you bring of the pureness, the earnestness, and just what the world is thirsting for now. You know, there's a thirst, but people know not what they thirst for until that thirst is quenched. And you all have so quenched us today.
Thank you.
It's been
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
for
And
having us.
we are just so grateful for you.
It's
God
been
bless you.
awesome.